Hello and welcome back to Speak. Today in the Speak seat, love calling it that. Today in the Speak seat, we have got Jerry Flachet. Did I get it?
You did. Well done.
Yay. And so, Jerry, would you like to give us a bit of an intro into who you are and what is the burning topic that you were like, I need to speak about this?
Sure. So the simplest way is I'm an independent safety consultant, advisor, whatever, freelance with 20 plus years experience in the sector. And I have been fortunate to be in the right place at the right time to actually get exposure to sort of pretty much every single sector, with the exception of sort of oil and gas, rail and aviation, but certainly across third sector, private and public.
Amazing.
And after all of this, I am now bringing to you two a question around safety culture, and specifically, why are we talking about safety culture when we should, or in my opinion, just be talking about culture?
Why does it bother you? Why is it a burning topic for Jerry right now?
It's a burning topic that's been burning for quite some years, and it's gotten better and more prominent, and it is quite topical at the moment, and it has been for the last few years. Recent posts, unsurprisingly, on LinkedIn have all picked up on it. Everyone's got an opinion on it. Everyone has differing opinions on it, which is good because it sparks debate. But the real issue that I've got is that, for me, certainly, the focus on safety culture is yet again putting safety over here. Why are we talking about culture, which encompasses all of those aspects, and then we talk about safety culture, which is over there. And everything that we hear at the moment, and there's a real push and there's good success, is about how do we embed safety in everything that we do? How do we make sure that everyone understands where it fits in, which part they have to play, that it's not the safety professional's job to do safety. And just talking about safety culture in the way that it's been spoken about, to me, just feels like it's just reinforcing again exactly what we're trying to prevent.
Thoughts?
When Jerry had said this is the topic, I was like, are the three of us just going to sit here agreeing with each other? Which was a concern.
Yeah.
Because I'm on this bus with you, Jerry. I'm like, yes. I do believe it reinforces the silos. It's just, and again, like, even with all culture stuff, it's just so fucking gray, and it's kind of hard to pin down. Is how do we measure it? What's a good survey? What's not a good survey? And it just feels like a really, I don't want to say a lazy kind of an answer. That's mean. No, but yeah, it feels lazy. Like, oh, fuck it, that's just the safety culture. And if you can fix the safety culture, it's like, it's culture stuff generally. It's slippery, and it's kind of like, I think, like, when we say like safety is an outcome, I think culture is an outcome. It's kind of something that I think you can influence it, and you can kind of try and shape it, but I'm not sure that you can intentionally go, I'm going to roll out and you know what? I've spoken about this before. Top of the to-do list every Wednesday, change the culture. It's like, why are you failing at your job, Elisa? But like, it becomes that big, really difficult to do thing. And I'm not saying that it can't be done. Yes, you can influence culture, and yes, you can make positive changes. But yeah, I think when you stick that label of it on, like, we don't have an accounting culture, we don't have a HR culture, we don't have a quality culture, we don't have a sales well, maybe there is. I've never heard of them. So then it just seems weird. Is it weird?
Well, that's kind of my point, in that it does feel weird. I don't understand. Now, scroll back, a couple of things that are being said at the moment, a couple of things that are very true. If you talk to any CEO or any person in a leadership position, and you ask them the question, would you be happy waking up one morning or getting a call late at night to learn that one of your colleagues, employees, staff have died as a result of work? I don't think anyone would say, yes, I'm happy. So you've got on that side, you've got leadership who see the value of human life and who see the value of people in their organization. turn that to anybody else and you go, are you going into work with the intention of either harming yourself or somebody else? With a few very small psychopaths that are out there, the answer is probably going to be no.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you've got people going into work with no intention of either harming themselves or others, with the expectation they're going to go and do their work, they're going to earn their cash, they're going to do a good job, they're going to go home. On the other end, you've got the leaders who want people to stay alive. So what is happening? That one, we're still having accidents. Two, that we're still killing people at work. And three, why is it that we feel that we need to talk about this separately as a safety culture? Now, if we're talking about the aspects of safety within culture, fine, no issues with that whatsoever. We could talk about the financial aspects of culture, which have led to many crises and collapse of organizations and everything else because it's been badly managed or whatever. And you can pick all those bits, Elisa, that you just mentioned, that all have a part to play in the culture. But again, maybe it's back to Stuart's comment around the narcissism of safety, that potentially we think actually we're more important. In some respects, it is important. It is important that people are in an environment that is safe to operate in. But does it warrant being spoken about separately? I don't know.
So
I don't think so.
I got some thoughts.
Yes, get in.
Got some thoughts.
Let's go.
So a couple of questions are sort of milling around in my head as you guys are talking. That whole thing about reinforcing silos, completely agree with. I'm going to silence my watch. It's picking up. It's going to distract me from my thoughts. And then that whole thing about how do we embed it, by talking about it separately again, we're sort of reinforcing our own problem because we're still setting it to the side, all this sort of stuff. And so one of my questions was, but does it mean it's not helpful? Is number one. So yes, it reinforces silos, and yes, it reinforces the problem about embedding, but does it mean that it's not helpful? And this other thing here, why do we talk about it differently? And it's the first time I've ever had this thought. You were going through it, Elisa, and you were like, we don't have a HR culture, a quality culture, where no one dies in those other areas. Like, yes, if you have terrible accounting policy, you're probably going to go bust. If you have a poor quality product, you're probably going to get a bad brand. No one's going to buy you. HR wise, if you're terrible at managing grievances, you won't be the employer of choice. No one dies in those scenarios, and that's I need to pull away from my thing to charge into the mental health impact of poor HR and grievances. Like, don't go there. But in the main, is it because the gravity of getting it wrong feels so huge that it feels like this is life? So we have to, and not that we want it to. So separate to the argument about should we be doing it, is this just business culture? But I think that whole why do we is because the fail of this area of the business is massive. And I wonder whether that drives the need or people's internal need to separate or pull it out.
I do think it does drive that need.
Yeah.
That's not just around the term safety culture or the idea of safety culture. That drives that need is there in fucking everything that we do around safety.
Yeah.
And so much of it is batshit fucking pointless, stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, but then that loops me back around to, does that mean it's not helpful? And I suppose that's where I kind of would probably come down on the safety culture bit. Is it a bit more kind of, it's probably not the worst thing we've been doing.
Yeah, in terms of like making process not fit for purpose.
We've like all our like shitty policies, blaming people, command control, just being fucking police officers, all like terrible, bad, being boring, being no crack, all of that. That's all we need to stop doing all of that. All that's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
The safety culture bit is probably a bit benign. Like, I don't know, is it just it annoys me, but then and annoys me, but because I think with a lot of elements of health and safety management, people do turn it into a dark art. Because next you the culture aspects. That's not culture now. That's climate. Fuck off. Like, that shit really. Then it starts to annoy me, and I start to disengage.
Yeah.
Like, you know what you need there now is a climate assessment, not a culture survey. I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah. And I think that's the bit. It's again that dark art piece of talking to an awful lot of people that genuinely are doing this for the right reason, trying to be helpful, and basically being like, oh, I can't sell this product to anyone if everybody just understands it's about saying, what can we do better to make you feel mentally and physically safe at work? And that can be correct resources, it can be fair treatment, it can be all of these things. But oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about the wrong thing there. No, I'm trying to help the people that actually want to do something different, or at the sharp end of us doing something rubbish. So yeah, I hate that. That's the minute, even if anyone starts barking down there, you're not talking about the right thing, that's climate, that's culture. I'm just like, are we helping or are we not? Is it helpful what we're going to do or what we're talking about? And stop trying to stick a label on it. Stop trying to make it complicated when it's not. Let's just do stuff that's helpful.
But also, I'm not saying that it's not complicated and it's not complex.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. Yeah. But anyway,
It's
sorry.
not complicated to have a conversation about this doesn't feel right. Something isn't wrong here. We need somebody to come in and that really understands. And what we're really talking about here is behaviours, attitude, resource, what happens behind closed doors, all that stuff. We're just talking about what makes the decisions happen that are happening right now, what makes that happen. And if we don't like the outcome because it's not safe, how do we create a different outcome? The starting of that conversation, the ethical place for that conversation is not complex. The diving into the why the brains work the way they do, how people react to environment, and organizational culture, right? The whole thing, that is complex and needs dicing down. But yeah, and it brings us right back to the beautiful thing of the topic, which is, is it versus safety culture versus organizational culture, and why do we approach them differently?
Well, kind of, I suppose, but then it almost sounds like you've talked yourself out of that argument. And much as I agree with everything that you've just said, in that they are the different aspects that need to be considered, and there are, just by virtue of everything you've listed, much as Elisa just said, it is complex, it's interdisciplinary, it's complicated as well as complex, and there's multiple variants. And I'm not convinced still that it needs a separate label, as you said. It's why are we labeling it? If you reduce it down to both the moral and the ethical reasoning, which is, are we doing enough? Could we be doing more? Are we endangering people? Why do you need to define that as something separate? That's the bit I suppose I'm wrestling with, which is actually, if you're not creating a safe environment, what other aspects of your organization do you think are excellent?
Yeah, and so now I've got a question, which is, if we were, let's say, train depot, say that we had a train depot that was hurting a lot of people consistently, how would we feel if we were working in that depot as an engineer and we're saying it's not safe here, this feels really eerie, something's going to happen to me, I'm scared of my colleagues, blah blah blah, and the CEO comes out and says, we're not going to look at this as safety culture, we're not going to look at it, we're going to be looking broadly, the business overall, we're just going to be looking at organizational culture. Do you think the individuals that were at risk and feeling at risk would probably feel like you were making this about something that's not them, just out of interest?
That's a really interesting one. My initial reaction is to go, you'd probably disenfranchise them. My second reaction would be to say, I don't think that would happen, because in the way that somebody would tackle that, to my mind, would be to say, we're not just going to look at safety. There are broader organizational implications here which have allowed this to develop and go unchallenged, which is why you're in an unsafe environment. And that's what I mean by there's, I suppose, the silo approach that let's turn this into something slightly more positive. We have a tendency as a society and in organizations and in society at the moment to try and break everything down to absolute binary it's either black or it's white or it's 0 or it's 1.
Yeah.
Now, there's a good reason for that, is we operate in a digital world. The digital world functions on blooming 0s and 1s. So, but in pursuing that, we are losing the nuance. We're losing that ability to look at what happens. I hate the fact that that blooming book has stolen what was a very good analogy, the blooming shades of grey.
The fuck, yeah, terrible writing as well. Ask me, I've read them all.
Good on you. I'm not judging. And I've lost my train of thought. My point is that we seem to have pursued this trying to reduce everything to yes, no choices, and we see it in other walks of life. And I don't want to go down the route of everything else that's going. You're either this or you're that. You can't be both. It's almost like you can't be both. You can disagree with something. Take protests at the moment. Just Stop Oil, as somebody pointed out. You can fundamentally disagree with the way they're putting their message across, whilst simultaneously completely agreeing with the message in itself. And at the moment, this is being put forward as, if you don't agree with their methods, you're against their message, which is nonsense.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
And that's where I'm going, is that to me, talking about safety culture is almost trying to go, we're just going to put it in this box over here and deal with it, which may engender some really good work, but has the potential to be really good work done in isolation, that somebody just goes, like most consultants will know, come to the end of their assignment, somebody writes up a brilliant report, you hand it in, and the client goes, thank you very much. And you're sat there going, no, hang on, there's so much more you can do with that. And they go, and you know full well that report is just going to go on a shelf somewhere. And that, to me, is where we have the potential of going with that. And back to your point, Crystal, yes, there is a potential for somebody to go, well, we're going to look at all of those other things. But in reality, you're going to look at all those other things anyway in wanting to tackle the very causes that created the unsafe environment in the first place. So why not talk about those different bits? And there's probably financial dimensions, there's probably resourcing dimensions, there's probably pressure dimensions and delivery and everything else.
Well, I think if you're any good, you'll look at all those things.
Yeah.
But we know that doesn't happen. People go, we're going to change safety culture. We are going to put up posters and we are going to roll out a badly managed BBS, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's not, and to Jerry, to your point about, I like that if you don't agree with the method, it automatically means you disagree with the message. And I think that's so important for just like a general thing of all the fucking infighting in the very small echo chamber on LinkedIn that we do about labels and methods and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, who gives a shit how you're doing it, as long as we're all getting to the same place, which is safer workplaces.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But, I mean, it's been going on for years and years and years, and there's some very, very, very intelligent, very well read, very well versed, very well published people who are all seem to be arguing over whether their label is more important than somebody else's label. And as you said, it's a small echo chamber with a very large footprint across the world of people who have no idea that this is happening and are just sitting there going, how do I keep my people safe?
Yeah. I just scribbled something on my pad here, and it was this, like, safety culture feeds up into business culture. It's just like a subset of business culture. And is it that we don't understand that safety culture is a subset of the culture, or is just part of business culture? Or is it that we are failing to address that every element of business affects safety?
Probably the latter.
Do you know what I mean?
Because like if safety culture is a subset of business, what are the other subsets? What are they? Because I haven't heard of them.
Yeah, because it's the things that it's
Because there are cultures and there's subcultures, and you can have like department cultures, and then you'll have team cultures, and you'll have cultures within teams. Like it's
for sure.
like there's just so much going on that it's just happening. And I think it's like you can do your bit to influence it, like, hey, be sound and resource things and just fucking care. But other than that, and like, I think actually, I don't know what I think about culture surveys, to be honest. I haven't a fully rounded opinion. I want to just be against them, but I think that's just how I am.
I'm naturally divisive
I think I just want to go bah without like, I'm not going to give a nuanced.
I don't know whether it's like where my brain is at today, whether the fact apparently I'm a positive person, who even knew? But I'm thinking to myself, I can't take complete umbrage against something where there is a complete effort and backing by a board, even if they don't understand that it is reinforcing a silo and still making it an add-on. If somebody says, I really want to make it safer here, and they say a lot of that is down to behavior, and we can't just write a process, boss, like it's bigger. We really need to get underneath the skin of the whys and also the influences. And we need to dig into this, and this company are really good at doing that, and they've got really great results. We want to bring them in, and they ask all the questions around the things that are affecting safety. That's really what they're doing. Forget sticking the culture sign on it, but they're saying, right, what affects the safety behaviors around here? What affects accident rates around here? Why aren't things progressing where they should do? And they dig into everything in terms of appropriate resource, how people are treated, time, pressure. I can't be completely against something where a business is with the best intent saying, I want to know everything that affects the safety of my people, and I want to deep dive on it, and I want to understand it. I can't disagree with it.
I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
I still think it's rare. And I would go back to Jerry's point of the report that sits on the shelf. And I think
where I know I'm a knobhead though, because until you said that, my brain's like, of course people care, because in my brain everybody cares.
No, they don't.
And I didn't think about somebody doing a half job or getting the report because the annual commitment statement of the business says we will.
For the most part, like I think, and we've had offline discussions, partial discussions, consultants, of which I am one, Consultants Unite. But like, I think there are, again, mostly fabulous fucking consultants who probably do have to use certain labels and certain things. Like I know there's consultants who go, not really into BBS, but I will use that label if it means I will get in the door and I can start making an impact. If I have to call it this so the business understands it makes sense, I will call it that. If I have to call it culture, whatever, I'll call it that. As long as I can be getting results. BBS, and behavior-based safety.
Right.
But like, train of thought gone. Wait. Fuck, it's gone. That's the cider, lads. Hey, listeners, I'm drinking. It's gone.
Probably half a cider in.
I'm only half a cider. It's been a long time. Oh, I have it. Oh yeah. So, right. So I think the consultants coming in doing a great job. To your point of like, oh, the businesses who care and are like, yeah, we'll do this and we'll get them in. There are so many businesses that do pay for people to come in and just to tick the box and say we've done it. And I know you have experience with like fabulous businesses. They're rare. Because there are so many businesses that either don't have the resources or don't have the understanding, or go, oh yeah, we'll ask the questions, we'll do the culture survey and then think that's it. Whereas actually, in fact, if you bring a company in and they get in under everything and they ask all these questions and they start creating this dialogue, and then the company does nothing with it, that is fucking worse than ever asking the question in the first place. So any listeners, if you think you're thinking about doing this stuff, but you don't think you can go the whole way with it, don't even ask the question, because there is nothing worse than going, oh, well, you definitely know the fucking problems now and you're not going to sort it out.
Yeah, I agree. I can't.
It's a wicked problem. Like it's, and again, we're kind of we're in an echo chamber as well of people who understand this stuff, people who care about this stuff, people who want to be stuck in it, and then just generally, if we kind of zoom back and look at the economy as a whole and the types of businesses that make up that, I don't know. Jerry, jump back in. I'm doing an awful lot of talking and you're the guest.
And I was just listening because obviously I've posed a problem and clearly I want input from the two of you. Certainly I'm looking forward to, and I've been looking forward to getting your input and your views on this. And I'm not arguing for or against this. I just have this issue that what I mean is that I've come in with I'm not going to sit there and go, I'm a rock, I'm immutable, I'm never going to change my opinion. I'm not coming in with safety culture is a waste of time, change my mind approach either. I suppose I'm coming at it if I'm from I want to understand. I've been in this game for many, many years. There are people who I hold in very high regard, who are arguing over what appears to be minutiae. And when you start digging into it, there's two reports that were put into a post today that I've skim read as best I could, and then realized that I'm way out of academia, and I can't skim read anyway near as well as I used to.
Top and tail it. Start at the top and that little paragraph at the end. Done.
Yeah, that's not how it was written anyway. But the bottom line is that this has been something that people have been wrestling with for 30, 40 years. The first time that, and this is me quoting from this, by the way, I didn't know this until earlier today. So the first time the term safety culture was used was after the Chernobyl incident. And there are apparently close to 50 different definitions of safety culture. And we're sitting there going, we're not arguing that there shouldn't be safety, that it shouldn't be an aspect of organizational culture in the same way that inclusion should be, that equity should be, that sustainability should be. Does that mean that we're talking about we are talking about an inclusive culture? Here's a different aspect that wouldn't you talk. Are we talking about a sustainable culture? Well, we should be, and we're starting to. Are we talking about equitable culture? Yes, definitely. So where, again, train of thought gone, and I'm only on water because I'm because I can't afford to drink with the training I'm doing at the moment. But nobody is saying that safety is not an integral and absolutely vital aspect of culture, and it should be. And I suppose where I'm getting hung up on this is you've got, as Elisa said, and I get the whole getting your foot in the door, and I've done it before, where somebody goes, "Oh, can you come and do this?" And I'm sitting there going, "Yes, I can, but it's not what you need."
Yeah,
you're not going to do what you need until I get in, or somebody equivalent to me gets in and sits and goes, "You've asked me to write risk assessment method statements." You fucking need. What you need is investment in training, in supervision, in learning, in having process, and having something that gives you assurance that you've got the right people in the right place with the right behaviors and the right equipment, with the right people looking after them, to go, "Whoa, hang on, have you thought about this?" That's not a risk assessment method statement, but somebody will have gone, "Oh, we haven't got risk assessment method statements, we should have some." Well, yes, you should.
And yes, I can do that for you.
And yes, I can do that, but let's use that to open the door. So maybe that's a better way of looking at it, is actually in talking about safety culture, is that a better way for us as professionals to, one, get out of our little bubble, interact with the rest of the business, and actually go, yeah, but we are a part of. Safety culture is not over there. Maybe that's maybe that's where it needs to go. Do we use that to break the door down?
Yeah, and and the other thing is labels, as much as I suppose the discussion around labels and things has taken a turn in the last while, labels aren't inherently bad either. Like, labels help give an understanding to things. They help to, anchor things in people's minds. When you say safety culture, people generally kind of go, "Oh, I kind of have an idea of what you're talking about. I kind of know what that is," even if there's multiple definitions or whatever. And people go, "How do you define culture?" And there is that very obvious one, "Oh, it's just how we do things around here." And you're like, is it? But then also, how would I describe it? It really is. It's a feeling, it's a vibe, it's a fucking, you walk in somewhere, you're like, "I feel good here," or, "You in danger, girl, get out." Like, you definitely. So, like, it's not a definition, but I would say it's a vibe. So the labels and the language, like, words create worlds, so we need language and labels to help us understand and to help us convey ideas and concepts and messaging. So it definitely does that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to disagree with that much as I'm probably in the same camp as you on the whole labels part. They do have a part to play, and it leads to a wider conversation. I just suddenly realised that clearly, although it's summer, I'm heading into a hell of a lot of darkness at the moment, just disappearing. But the point is around they help with communication, and they help to create something which I don't think we have here, which is that commonality of language. Communication is something that is inherently essential to what we do, and yet we are not very good at it. In that we will communicate by innuendo, by metaphor, by assumption, by inference, and we're not learning. It doesn't matter how many times it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We're not learning from that. So maybe that's I know this plays into the wider piece for me, which is around if we're not good at communicating, and if we don't improve our communication, then we're not going to have the impact that we want, and we're not going to see the improvements that we want.
So I am thinking to myself here about the whole labelling and signposting. If you think about D&I leading to DE&I, we needed the signpost everyone understood, like diversity, get it, inclusion, I get it now. The equity is like the next step that we all had to go through the D&I bit before we get to the DE&I bit. And I wonder whether the difference is, and this is just me like thinking out loud, that all of the work around D&I has when it surfaces in an organization, it's because something has to change. It's because something is going really wrong typically, and it has to be addressed. And therefore the DE&I is in progression. And I wonder whether one of the issues is, back to your point about people going in and not doing very good work, writing a report to say they've written the report, is you don't have to want something to change to do safety culture as a business. You don't have to really be into it or really care about the change that it's bringing to get work, when so many organizations want to tick the box. It doesn't have to be progression, it can just be output. And whether that's part of the problem, because if we were really progressing when we started talking about this 40 years ago, and we started talking about safety culture, we would now all really be having massively mature conversations about safety being an outcome, and actually it's business culture. We would be having that conversation because the intent behind all of the work would have been to create change. But is there almost inevitability where you're like, well, people do get hurt, you can't ever take it all away, people will, unfortunately, I don't want to say it out loud, but I will, people will lose their lives in Britain, in the world, at work. And so whether people are just like, well, some of it's inevitable, we'll get this report and we'll say we've done it. And, if the consultant doesn't care and the business doesn't care, then it's never going to progress to the next stage, to the next maturity level. And I wonder whether that's part of the problem. For me, it's just that I'm realizing how wonderfully, happily ignorant I am that people exist that will just take the money, and that businesses exist that will just tick the box. And actually what it does is it stunts, and it leaves us in this bubble of having this conversation about why aren't we talking about something much wider than safety culture, because that's a buzzword. When we were using it after Chernobyl, it was real. We were talking about an organization. Don't you dare get unstable on our internet.
It is getting unstable.
No.
Stop it. Old internet.
And I just wonder whether it's because some people have made an absolute living out.
It's a fucking shocker, I'll tell you that.
So we just had a blip there, so I've lost my train of thought for a moment. Everyone's taking a turn to do that this evening. But I just wonder whether it is the fact that people are happy to take the money and not actually progress an organisation. Because if every organisation that had a safety culture survey repeatedly for years and years, we would be talking about how to genuinely push through, which means you have to get to the business point. You have to get, this is everybody, this is everything, and everything affects the safety and the outcome, people's outcomes here. So I just think that was my ramble, even though it was cut halfway through.
I think it's probably a good point to kind of land on and start wrapping up on, though, of what, like, yes, there's companies coming in doing these surveys there and doing this kind of culture change work. There's companies who are bringing them in. I think for the most part the intention is probably good. I think the intention is good, but it takes really strong people on both sides of that for those kind of rollouts to actually work. Like, you need to have absolute guns inside the business, guns of consultants, and they are there, but it's like, to be fair, for both sides, it's trying to find that match, which can be really difficult as well.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I think things can fall down. But I suppose
maybe one of the takeaways for that, Elisa, that wicked point is, if you're looking to do this work and you're really serious, ask tried and tested results. Where have people worked? What have they actually achieved? What has the outcome been? How mature are they? And actually really do your digging.
Yeah. And the same with like even like general like engagement surveys. Like, I had a brilliant conversation with two women a couple of weeks ago, both from different businesses, and one was an accountant, the other was in sales or something. They were fucking scathing about the engagement surveys that their businesses sent out, and I was literally like, I don't want to record this is gold. But and where like they like, this is just fucking literally surveys turning around and eating themselves. It was like, oh, our department gets pizzas if we get the most engagement on our engagement surveys. And she said it, and I was like, this is so fucking depressing. And it's just like this problem that we tend to think is like a safety thing of like, fucking LTI, Pizza Friday or whatever. It's pervasive in so many different elements of all this kind of HR engagement, all this kind of stuff. It's just rotten.
Yeah. In terms of my wrap thoughts, I've probably got more questions than I had at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think my landing point is, just because it's just because it's a separate thing at the moment doesn't mean it's not helpful, but it definitely isn't where it should be. And it probably means that we're missing that next stage in a mature conversation about, this isn't just safety going up. This is the whole business affects safety. And this isn't, we need to be looking at this in a much more holistic way if we want to really generate change and really do what we say in all those statements and embed safety in everything we do. You have to admit that everything impacts safety then. That's probably my internal landing point.
Okay, Jerry, where are you at?
I'm kind of in the same place, which is and I'll take a slightly different view on this, is that to me the bit that's missing at the moment is the academic research and the supporting to validate all of those different things, because there's not enough. There absolutely is not enough. There's too much infighting. There's not enough pulling together of evidence-based research and papers of people that can actually just go, right, well, how, if we want to do this, how? And that, where is that framework? Because there are too many different things at the moment that are competing with, as Elisa has laid into safety surveys for quite a few times. And I'm quite happy to support that, because I agree there are so many out there that are very badly done. And
they're
yet,
good, I like them.
But yes, that's not to say there aren't brilliant ones out there.
Exactly.
Just prove it.
But it's which one do you use and how do you deploy it, and how do you make sure you don't bias the results at the point you deploy it, etc., etc.
Yeah, big problem.
So, and that's what I mean about there's not enough evidence and not enough research that's evidence backed. There's plenty of papers that are out there that are effectively offering an opinion.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the bit that really is missing, much like a ring light for me.
Amazing.
We're podcaster bros, that's why we've got our ring lights.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's a wicked place to wrap. I quite like the fact that we were all slightly, or actually there was some sort of opposing what about and some discussion between us. I think it's really healthy. So yeah, thank you to Jerry for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to everybody for tuning in to this episode of Speak. Please join us in a couple of weeks for the next one. Bye, everyone.
See ya.